Okay, I'm Bobby Holloway, and I was a registered nurse here at the Red Cross Hospital in the 1950s, and this is where I got my professional start at this hospital. I had a lot of things that happened to me that year. I grew up.
Do you remember a lady named Miss Lola Fitzgerald? Lola Bennett?
Lola Bennett, no.
In medical records.
Oh, yes, she was downstairs. I worked in the operating room upstairs.
And Miss Williams?
Denny Williams?
Yeah.
Yeah, Denny was an x-ray technician.
Okay.
And actually, Denny was the first black registered person to do x-rays in the state of Kentucky.
Mic check 1, 2, 3, testing 1, 2.
I worked with Ray Oglesby in the operating room, so.
Okay.
And then sometimes I helped on the floors too.
Okay. Wow. You got a lot of history here.
Right. And we actually we were the only black hospital in the city.
Check 1, 2, 1, 2. Mic check 1, 2, 3.
We were the only hospital, because this was during the time of segregation, when so much was going on. We had other hospitals, but black people were not allowed to come in as patients. So this was our hospital. We had our own doctors, we had our own nurses, and our business office ran the same as the rest of the hospitals. We had the same equipment that most of the hospitals had in World War during those days.
Okay. And a lot of doctors from Meharry and...
Most of our doctors came from Meharry and Howard.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rhonda Ramsey Finney. I was born here at the Great Red Cross Hospital, and about 20 years later, after I got my degree from Indiana University, I was working as an intern at Methodist Hospital, and I got a job here at Red Cross in the laboratory. In my last year of my internship, I'm a clinical laboratory scientist, and at that time it was a community hospital. It had a 4-bed ICU unit, and I was the night shift in the laboratory. I'm working by myself, and we'd have to go up and take care of the emergencies in the ICU unit, and it was quite an emotional task because it is such a family-oriented hospital, and we knew a lot of the patients, so we gave them extra care. And the funny thing is that I was in the break room eating my lunch one day, and I looked around and saw that there were all subway towels on the wall, and I said, well, what is this? And they said, this used to be the delivery room. So I was having my lunch sandwich in the room where I was born. So your history
I was born
great.
here too.
Oh, were you? Yeah. So I was born here in 1949.
48.
September 30th, 1949, and I don't remember who the doctor was. I'm gonna have to look at my birth certificate and figure that out. All right, thank you. So happy to be here.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Right. Thank you. Thank you.
Sheriff Brian Hammond's daddy delivered me here at this Red Cross Hospital.
Red Cross.
At this Red Cross. Yeah, I just got back from Memphis. Yeah, I was at the IAM March.
That's real.
That's right.
I've been in civil rights all my life since I was 13.
That's real.
And jailed. Downtown Louisville restaurant.
Yeah.
Wrote a book about it.
That's real.
I can remember as a kid, I was born in 61.
My name is Greg Conley, and I heard the history about the Red Cross Hospital. I had the distinct pleasure on a couple of numerous occasions to transport Dr. Brand, Dr. Dockery, who take a ride out here. They were explaining to me about the formation of Red Cross and how they were excluded from other hospitals. So when they finally integrated, this was closed in '76, they gained admittance to the other hospitals, but the history they taught me is so profound. And just a pleasure to be here today to see this marker be erected. Greg Conley, great part of history. I'm so glad to be a part of it.
And I can remember the work that Lewis. I can remember the work that Lewis Coleman and Maddie Johnson used to do
How you
in
doing?
the West End.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes, my name is Charlene Hampton Holloway. I was born April the 26th, 1947 at the Red Cross Hospital, the first African-American established hospital in the state of Kentucky. I was delivered by the famous African-American doctor, Dr. Roscoe Bryan Jr., the father of Metro Councilwoman Sherry Bryan Hamilton. And I'm happy to be here today. I just got back last week from the I Am March in Memphis. I've been in civil rights all my life since I was marching at 13 and with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I'm sure you got it. So I'm happy to be here. I brought my husband of 51 years. He's here because he's the one who asked me to marry him 51 years ago.
Amen.
So I told him, I said, come to the Red Cross Hospital unveiling. So I'm thank you all for being here and supporting Metro Council Sherry Bryan Hamilton. This is a great event.
Amen.
I saw your video, so I won't be there.
This is more
I won't
important. This is more important.
That's right.
There's enough people there doing that. I done done what I had to do.
Yes, ma'am.
I hear you, girl. She's a mess.
How you been doing?
Hi dear, how you? I saw your picture on TV. For the K, for the J. K-E-A. For J, yeah, K-E-A. Girl. I didn't even know.
This morning, we're doing a historical marker for Red Cross.
Okay. How you feel today? You look lovely.
Thank you very much. I am very happy to actually have the hospital where I was born dedicated.
Okay. This is awesome.
All right.
It's Linda Hart Lewis. I am going to be the MC for this morning. Want to welcome everybody for coming. Thank you all. And at this point, I think we're going to go ahead and start recognizing dignitaries in the room, or in the space. Temple, could you come up and help me, please, real quick? Come on. You know I need help on this. So I saw Representative Dara Owens. Hello. Dr. Morris Weiss, sitting on the front row. Next to Dr. Weiss is retired Sergeant Jackie Roberts. Glad to have you here. And Mr. Tom Owen, historian, you're there. And I think that's about it. So once again, I would like to welcome everybody out for this great occasion. The dedication of the historical marker for the Red Cross Hospital that used to be in this building. I get to go first, so I get to do my story first. So my connection with Red Cross is my father used to be a physician here at Red Cross, and so it all kind of started with me. I had a girlfriend, Janie Winstead, who sent me an email and said, Linda, there's a doctor who's looking for anyone who was born, worked at, had parents at Red Cross Hospital. And I said, great. Because as I got older, I kept thinking, I thought Red Cross Hospital was a great institution. You know, it hit my life in so many different ways. So I wanted to kind of give something back for it. So called Dr. Tux, went in, got to talk to he and Marty, and found out that he had already talked to Brunhilda Williams Carrington, who I grew up with and went to high school with, and then also Councilwoman Sherry Bryan Hamilton, who I also grew up with. We got together. They had been working on some projects already. I wanted to do something to help, and so we kind of formed the Red Cross Hospital Committee. So I'm one of the members. So let me just go ahead and mention to you a few ways that I am connected with Red Cross Hospital. I've mentioned already that my father was a physician here. My mother, Janetta Gunhart, she was very big on instilling into me and my brother who is Jeffrey Hart, sitting over here writing something down. And to be proud of our community, our black community. Of course, as I was growing up, segregation was still in. So it's a smaller group of people, but it was amazing after we started getting in and doing the research for Red Cross Hospital, how so many things connected in my life. So I've said already that my father was a physician here. Probably the next point was my brother and I were born here. The next point is my brother and I are one of the Red Cross Hospital kids. You know, it was a whole group of kids, you know, that wherever we went, we always just kind of ran into each other. You know, we were always doing things together. Speaker will be Dr. Wayne Tuxis. He is one of the Red Cross Committee members, amongst a lot of other things.
Thank you very much. And Sherry, I want to thank you very much for getting us a nice non-snow day. I applaud you on that. You know, the Red Cross Hospital was born in 1899 and it kind of died in 1976. Now I say kind of died because Red Cross Hospital lives on in the spirit of its founders, nursing staff, auxiliary staff, administrative, patients who have been treated at this facility, and of course, in the sons and most especially the daughters of those who worked at this facility. Of course, the three of those daughters are up here with me right now. To put the importance of Red Cross Hospital into context, let's think about this. 1866, 1 year after the Civil War ended, there was a group of African Americans, along with people from the Freedmen's Bureau, who sat down to try to raise funds to form a hospital for the Hospital for Sick and Helpless Negroes. Now, this was an effort that was put on by the community because there was no place else for African Americans to go for health care. Now, unfortunately, that did not bear fruit. 30 years after the Civil War, in 1895, a physician by the name of William Henry Fitzbutler did start a hospital here in Louisville called the Citizens Auxiliary Hospital, which remained for a few years, but it did not last very long. But still, that was the initial effort in trying to provide health care outside of home for African Americans. 1899, 34 years after the Civil War ended, Doctors Merchant, Wedber, and Scott formed the Red Cross Hospital at the corner of 6th and Walnut Street. In 1905, they moved the facility because they needed more space to where we are today. And that still has its lasting influence over all of us. Now, what about the importance of Red Cross Hospital? Well, let's remember what was going on in 1899 and 1905. Jim Crow was the law of the land. And of course, we had, thanks to Carl Day, we had the Day Law.
On the list then is Jennifer Hancock, and she is President and CEO of Volunteers of America.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Jennifer Hancock, the President and CEO here at Volunteers of America, and I am just so pleased to welcome each of you here, and especially to Councilwoman Bryant Hamilton and to Linda and all of the committee members for making today possible. And of course, I'm always thrilled to have our mayor join us. Thank you, Mayor Fisher, for being here today and for helping us celebrate this important milestone in this building's history. You know, we often call important events like this historic, but our event today truly defines historic as we unveil this Kentucky historical marker and honor the legacy and impact of Red Cross Hospital. Of course, for Volunteers of America, we feel connected to this legacy every single day. We live it. The former Red Cross Hospital is our home. Let me tell you how we keep this legacy alive. At Volunteers of America, we live by 5 core values: compassion, commitment, diversity, integrity, and justice. We live by those values in the programs we offer and the services we provide to our community. Let me say those words again: compassion, commitment, diversity, integrity, and justice. Could anything describe Red Cross Hospital and its legacy any better? Pick any word. Compassion. A word our city, under our mayor's leadership, understands very well.
Councilwoman Barbara Sexton Smith, 4th District.
Well, thank you. And as your councilwoman representing District 4, welcome to the heart and the divine intersection of our Snitzelburg neighborhood. And I have one applauding for Snitzelburg. Snitzelburg would be that way, where the fabulous solid waste management services guys going through with the truck. Hey, we love them very much. And then behind me and coming this way is our beloved Merriweather neighborhood. In doing the research for today, Councilwoman Sherry Bryan Hamilton and I had many conversations, and we decided that we also want to mention Fort Hill.
Because is Ms. Bobby G. McDonald Holloway.
My children are still taken care of. You know, when you reach a certain age, they become the mothers. So we accept it, though. Thank you. My connection here at Red Cross Hospital was as a young RN that just finished school in 1950s. I finished school in 1955 and came here to Red Cross Hospital for a job. At that time, they needed someone in the operating room. So I was hired by Carolyn Beatty to be an operating room nurse here at the Red Cross Hospital. This is where I grew up as a professional person. I came here as a very young lady, right out of school, not experienced in a lot of things, but I learned so much about being here with my people. This was our hospital. You know, we had multiple things going on here at the hospital. Our hospital was, as they called it, the Black Hospital. But we had the same equipment and the same things that most of the hospital in the area at that time. As you know, if you go back to 1955, none of the hospitals had a lot of the things that they have now. They didn't do things. The CPR that we did in those days was unreal. But I did experience in the operating room right here, there was a lot of first things in my life that I experienced here at this hospital. My first cardiac arrest was doing a surgery right here in this operating room, which was on the 4th floor. We didn't have a recovery room, and several of us got together and we planned, and we were among the first 3 hospitals in Kentucky and Louisville that did set up a recovery room for our patients. I was hoping that we'd get to go to the tour this morning, but I understand that the elevator's not working at this time. But I did want to just walk through that 4th floor and look at what we used to do, and look at where we used to change our clothes, where we worked all day long, and then we played all afternoon. George Allen was our nursing assistant at that time up in the surgery. And I see we have a lot of people that worked here or was born here and that are out this morning, and I'm so thankful for that, because some of you I recognize, some of you I didn't. You know, as we get older, we don't remember a lot of things. But we do the best we can with it. We had our office downstairs had the same administrators, the same people working there as other hospitals did. And we had all of the services that were offered in other hospitals. We had, usually on the 1st floor was our medical surgical patients. And the 2nd floor, we had a little pediatric ward over in that building. It's gone now. On that side was where we had our pediatric ward, and we also had the OB ward on the second floor. And Miss Merchant and Dorothy Jones really handled that area quite well.
Okay, so we're going to change up the order just a little bit, and we're going to have Mayor Greg Fisher to come forward. On Mayor, this is all yours.
Thank you so much. Well, late good morning to everybody here. Thanks so much for coming out. Oh, a lot of history here. I do want to recognize our state representative, Darrell Owens, who's sitting over here in the front row looking very handsome. Thank you for all the wonderful things you've done for our city and our state. Well, when I came into office 7 years ago, I talked about a couple things, but two of the things I talked about was compassion, being an even more compassionate city and being an even healthier city. And there's probably no greater place than where we're standing in front of here today at the Red Cross Hospital that pulled all that together.
1922 became the first black woman police officer in the state when she was appointed to the City of Louisville's Police Department. Chuck is part of a group of retired police officers, including Sergeant Jackie Taylor Roberts, who is here with us today, who are currently raising funds through the LLC at PNC Bank to mark the gravesite for Bertha Wedby and her husband, Dr. Wedby, at the Louisville Cemetery. But the heart and soul of Red Cross was its first superintendent, Mary Merritt. Miss Mary Eliza Merritt was born in 1881 to truck farmers in the small community of Possum Kingdom in Madison County, Kentucky, where she attended the Berea Academy and worked in the home of the Berea College president and his wife, William and Eleanor Frost. After graduating from Berea Academy, Merritt enrolled in Berea College. To earn enough money to continue college, she taught in the Berea Colored School and Manchester Colored School, approximately 60 miles away in Clay County. She graduated in 1903, a year before the Day Law closed Berea to African American students. And she was one of 3 black women to complete the Berea College nursing program. Merritt continued teaching after her graduation for 2 additional years. In 1904, Merritt decided that she needed additional nursing training in a larger arena and enrolled in Freedman's Hospital Training School for Nurses in Washington, D.C., where she graduated in 1906 and returned to Kentucky as the state's first graduate nurse from an accredited school of nursing. In fact, Mary Merritt was the first registered nurse, black or white, in Kentucky. During 1906 and 7, she worked as a private duty nurse for abolitionist and Berea College founder Cassius M. Clay. Her next 2 years were spent in Leavenworth, Kansas, as superintendent of the Protective Home and Mitchell Hospital, whose patients were elderly women and orphan children. During her time in Kansas, she taught the only graduating class of nurses in the hospital's history. And while in Kansas, she became a charter member of the National Association of Colored Graduate Nurses and was elected to serve as secretary of that body for 2 years. It's not known why she returned to Berea in 1909 to work again for the Frost family as their housekeeper and commission matron, but her relationship with Eleanor Frost would lead her to her final and most important career move. While she was vacationing with the Frost family in Chautauqua, New York, she met Miss Lucy Belknap, one of the trustees of the Red Cross Hospital in Louisville. And through the encouragement of both Lucy Belknap and Eleanor Frost, Merritt agreed to accept a position as superintendent at the Red Cross Hospital in September 1911. However, after accepting the job and touring the hospital, Merritt was extremely disheartened and declared, after the first trip through the building, she says, "My heart sank. This couldn't be the place. The flooring wasn't covered, the kitchen stove was warped, the operating room was upstairs, and everything was so discouraging." But fearing that people would think she didn't want to help her own people, she decided to take the position for 1 year only. She later explained that she forgot when that year was up, and it was 34 years before she left the hospital, which was her heart and soul, and training young black nurses her passion. In the beginning struggling years, Red Cross was initially supported entirely through money from the black community's fundraising efforts, such as fish suppers, raffles, teas, and donations from church and civic groups, including the Kentucky Association of Colored Women's Clubs, which organized in 1903. Black club women were critical to its survival and to also starting black hospitals in 3 other smaller communities in Kentucky. Also during its early years, the black doctors appealed to a number of Louisville's philanthropic-minded white citizens for assistance, people who recognized its community value, and who not only made contributions of beds, blankets, and furniture, but 2 women from some wealthy Louisville families, namely Mrs. J.B. Hattie Speed and Lucy Belknap, and the Belknap family provided financial support to the hospital for many years. Both women responded by forming and serving on the Red Cross Club and the Red Cross Advisory Board for many years, and solicited funding from the Louisville Welfare League. Mrs. Speed became one of its most active supporters, and she was influential in securing funds from the city, state, the Louisville Welfare League, and the WPA for the hospital. Members of both groups paid off the mortgage, financed several renovations of the hospital and additions, such as the home for the nurses next door, and their support was crucial, for it was not until 1920 that the state began giving an annual appropriation of $5,000 to the hospital. On December 15, 1932, a new nurses' home opened, thanks to a gift of Mrs. Speed in memory of Pat Smith, who was a family domestic worker for many years. The building had headquarters for the nurses, a classroom, a recreation room, and during World War II, funds were also added for training nurses and interns, a new operating room, x-ray equipment, and more laboratory equipment. Some lots next door were purchased with money left in Mrs. Hattie Speed's will. She died in 1942, and on May 15, 1944, the annex was dedicated. The medical staff here was composed of physicians, surgeons, and dentists of both races, and offered 3 major services: medicine, surgery, and obstetrics. And in 1930, the crippled children's ward for 15 patients opened on the first floor. It was the first time in history of Kentucky that a special ward for black children was opened for the surgical and correctional treatment of orthopedic illnesses and injuries. It had a sun porch, shower baths, and a large light and airy playroom. At that time, Red Cross had a 60-bed capacity. And in 1948, Red Cross became the first private black hospital sanctioned by the American Cancer Society to manage a small cancer clinic. But the nursing training program was a very important aspect of Red Cross. Shortly after Mary Merritt joined the staff, it began offering nurses training. William H. Perry, a name some of you may recognize, as he was also the principal of an elementary school here, developed the department and set up a 3-year curriculum that required young women to take several courses in nursing, to work in clinics, and to assist in minor operations before becoming nurses. When Mary Merritt joined the staff here, it was a small 2-story frame structure which accommodated only 10 patients and contained limited equipment. But through her persistence and hard work, it became a magnificent brick building with a well-equipped training school registered in the state of Kentucky and sending out graduates each year to minister to the sick. Miss Merritt became closely associated with the nurse training at Red Cross, and because of her work and Mr. Perry's, nearly all of the first black nurses in Kentucky received their training at Red Cross, since it was the only hospital in the state that accepted black women in its nurse training program. One writer who praised Merritt's service to Red Cross described her as superintendent, mother, guiding spirit, cook, and chief inspiration. She, as I said, worked here for 34 years before she passed in 1953. At the turn of the century, nursing schools proliferated nationally, but only a few accepted black students. Chauvinistic attitudes dictated that men would be doctors and women who were viewed as natural nurturers with a more gentle touch, as the biblical helpmate to man should be nurses. Consequently, black nurses were not viewed as professional positions, but were seen merely in the prescribed role of caregiver, primarily in the home arena. However, women who became nurses did not see themselves as merely doctors' helpers or co-partners, as one doctor called them, but as medical professionals trained to provide better health care for their people. Regardless of state standards for black nurses, they pushed themselves to attain graduate education in their field. And we all know how invaluable nurses are, like Ms. Holloway here, to providing the best health care on a daily basis for patients, and how much the doctors then and now depended on them, respected their professional nursing, and the service they provided for our patients. In 1949, Merritt was awarded the Mary Mahoney Award for Distinguished Service in Nursing for her role in desegregating the American Nurses Association, and she also received a Certificate of Merit from President Woodrow Wilson for her Red Cross camp work in World War I. You can just imagine her pride in 1949 as she watched a procession of 400 nurses, delegates carrying a banner from their home state, enter Louisville's Quinn Chapel AME Church for a 5-day convention of the National Association of Colored Graduate Nurses. Due to her efforts, nurses from Red Cross were able to practice in Kentucky and all over the nation. But even with the much-needed white support, Red Cross could not meet the many needs of the growing larger black population of 50,000, much less blacks from out in the state. The hospital was usually filled to capacity. Persons needing immediate attention often had to be turned away, and patients were sometimes dismissed earlier than good practice would dictate because of the urgent need for bed space. Whites affiliated with Red Cross acknowledged that it was inferior, but unfortunately, they never went on record to urge city leaders to admit black doctors and patients to the many medical facilities. Instead, they simply continued donating money to Red Cross. The white advisory board members gave contributions that enabled it to remain in existence and thus thwarted the push for the admission of black doctors into white hospitals. It has been written that whites supported black institutions in part out of paternalism, part out of genuine philanthropy, and in part because they desired racially segregated institutions at the time. It has been said that whites contributed to black hospitals in part to ensure blacks would not demand equal access to their institutions. But when they started Red Cross in 1899, the doctors considered it a temporary measure and looked forward to the day when they can practice in all hospitals in the city. But as time passed and segregation in medical care persisted, they grew weary and bitter about being restricted to Red Cross, especially in some areas because it was inferior to white hospitals. And despite pleas for change, it would be the late 1950s and early 60s before black doctors were granted staff privileges and allowed to practice in all the public and private hospitals here in Louisville. But the eventual integration of black physicians into the Jefferson County Medical Society, along with the desegregation of the local hospitals, helped to bring about the demise of Red Cross in 1975 and 76. I can only hope that our historically black colleges and universities like Kentucky State, Fisk, Spelman, and Howard don't fade away and die like our black hospitals did because of a lack of financial support and increased competition for students and dollars. But it should be noted that long before whites started contributing to welfare causes, local blacks had started and sustained a college, a hospital, opened a medical college, an orphanage, and other important institutions and businesses, which is remarkable when the overall poverty of the community is considered. Throughout its 77-year period, Red Cross was the black community's most prized public institution. But these institutions could not just rely on large endowments from a handful of wealthy benefactors. Instead, it took hundreds of black citizens patronizing and contributing small amounts to keep their institutions afloat, from countless church contributions, baking contests, picnics, and other small social events. In Louisville and black communities all across the country after the Civil War and during Reconstruction, blacks saw and answered the necessity of creating or expanding their own institutions during the late 19th century. Here they were under no illusions about being accepted in white institutions. Therefore, they worked consistently to keep their institutional life thriving. By the early 1900s, black communities of all sizes were imbued with a sense of self-help and a spirit of togetherness. Louisville's black doctors were outspoken on racial matters. They were excluded from white hospitals and had practically no relationship with white doctors. They served and depended entirely on their patients and the black community for their livelihood, and therefore felt fewer constraints against protesting racial injustices. They ran for office, started and ran newspapers, called for the state to increase funding and improvement for black schools, protested police brutality, led the NAACP and the Louisville Urban League, worked to improve health conditions in the black community, set up well baby clinics, provided house calls, fought for civil rights and for the rights of blacks to use the main library branch of the public library, downtown facilities, and other public services. They formed the Fall City Medical Society and championed the right of black physicians to use the city-owned hospitals, which they eventually attained. I hope we will take inspiration from the men and women who built and sustained Red Cross by working together and supporting each other, and do for our communities with the spirit of unity and togetherness we sorely need. If you'd like to know more about the history of Red Cross, we have Dr. Weiss's seminal work here on your chair. And I also read 2 books by Dr. George Wright, Life Behind a Veil, Blacks in Louisville, 1865 to 1930, and A History of Blacks in Kentucky, Volume 2, 1890 to 1980. And I learned a lot about Mary Merritt and her contributions by reading Karen Cotton McDaniel's dissertation, Local Women, The Public Lives of Black Middle-Class Women in Kentucky Before the Modern Civil Rights Record. If anyone would like to record a remembrance of Red Cross, we have James and Clinton Bennett here, or recording this for posterity, and you can be part of the DVD if you'd like to take part with that. And I'd like to thank you all for coming today.
Congratulations. Come forward. Come forward. Come forward. Come forward. From behind them. Come from behind them. Yeah.